welcome back to another Jazz Drum Q-tip of the week. My name is Quincy Davis. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're new, then let me know who you are, where you're tuning in from. Write me a comment, a little message down below. I love hearing from you, even the haters. Yes, there are some haters out there, but I love you too. All right, so I'm talking about how the bass drum should be played on the drum set, in particular in a jazz context, because there are specific things in jazz on a jazz bass drum that we do that may not apply or may not apply as much in other styles. I'm breaking down six aspects of playing the bass drum that you need to check out and you need to know. So I'm going in. If you guys are ready, then you need to let me know. You need to let me know by saying what? By saying what? Let's go! Feathering the bass drum. Okay, this is a very, 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 very important topic that I've covered on my channel, and I think I have a video or two about this, but it doesn't hurt to talk about it again. It's a very important and traditional technique that jazz drummers have used basically since, you know, the beginning of the bebop era. I won't go into too much detail, but when the timekeeping responsibilities went from the bass drum in the swing era to the ride cymbal in a roundabout way, in the bebop era, drummers still continued to play the bass drum on all four beats, but at much quieter than when they were playing in the swing era, like this, right? So they were playing much quieter, therefore you could still feel it. That's the idea. They still wanted to have the feeling without the volume. So the famous saying that a lot of drummers say is, it's meant to be felt but not heard, right? And that's the idea. So this is an example of feathering the bass drum. And this is something you have to really focus on and practice and isolate. Just isolate your feet. Now I'm going to talk about my technique. And it's not my technique, but how I think of feathering. So you can either, there's three approaches or three things you could be doing. You could either be pushing into the bass drum with the beater, which is what I'm doing here. And you see my body, I'm moving, and it's a little inconsistent. And it's a lot more volume, way more volume than I need. Okay, so that's example one. Example two is you do the opposite and you pull the bass drum beater off, like so. And now again, you're gonna get, because you're not keeping the beater on the head, you're not getting any muffling, therefore it's wide open because there's nothing inside this bass drum, and therefore the bass drum's resonating a lot more than probably the band wants, especially the bass player, since they're playing quarter notes likely with the bass drum. And if you're doing this, it's gonna drown out their quarter note, right? So that's the second way, where you pull off, but there's no muting. And then the third way is exactly what I do, which is I leave the beater on. If you notice, at a rested state, my foot at a rested state allows the beater to stay on the drum head, right? And maybe this is an adjustment you make for your pedal, so that when you're rested, your foot is resting on the plate and your foot is all the way up on the foot plate. The beater is actually on the head. That way, now when I feather, I'm actually just resting. I kind of rest every beat, so to speak. And there's a built-in muffling effect so that it doesn't get too out of hand. Even at faster tempos, I'm kind of resting. I'm not pushing, I'm not pulling off, but it's in between. Right? And the faster you go, the less time it can stay on the head naturally. But that's kind of the idea. But you want to make sure you're able to do this at a very quiet dynamic. And I'll show you the effect, the difference between feathering and not feathering in the context of playing time. No left hand, just ride cymbal, hi-hat, and bass drum. So feathering sounds like this in context. All right? No feathering. Feathering. No. Faster tempo. 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so hopefully you're able to notice the difference of when I'm feathering and when I'm not in this video. But in a live context, if you were to hear it live, you can really feel the difference. Again, make sure you're able to do this at a quiet volume, and your bass players will thank you. General volume on the bass drum in a jazz context is much quieter than other styles because jazz often is played in an acoustic setting with acoustic instruments, though they can be amplified, but generally it's predominantly an acoustic style music. So your default volume needs to be much quieter than other styles, right? So even if you're playing a funk groove, you might, instead of playing it see, I'm kind of really laying into the bass drum. You can lighten up and play. Right? And I don't know if that comes across in the video, but it's much lighter, but it's still felt and you can still hear it, but it won't cover up the rest of the band. So in general, you can lighten up in the bass drum, and often, and we're going to get into it also, in jazz, we play an open bass drum, which means the bass drum rings and resonates a lot more than if it was if there was a pillow or something inside the bass drum. Therefore, that ring can really get out of hand if you're always playing it really loud. So in general, your volume needs to be much, much quieter, maybe half of what you're used to. And that'll get you closer to the volume in general for the whole kit that you should be playing at. All right, so you got feathering, but what do you do when you want to actually play notes and comp on the bass drum in between the feathering? I'm just going to do it. I'll demonstrate it, and then I'll talk about it. All right. So did you notice what I did? There's no rigid system that you have to adhere to. All it is when you're not playing a note, you feather. When you're feathering and you want to play a note, you just stop feathering and you play that note. So, and I'll do it at a slow tempo so you can see, but there's no specific system I'm following. So if I want to play a note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then I return to feathering right after. It's the off beats. When I'm playing off beats, usually it takes a beat and a half for me to return to feathering. But there's no rule that says, hey, you have to start feathering right after you play that note. Whenever you're comfortable to return to feathering, just fall back into the feathering. So it looks like this again at a slow tempo. Make sense? And again, one more thing I want to just remind you. Notice the volume I'm playing at. It's much, 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 much quieter. And this kind of leads to a couple other really important topics or subtopics of playing the bass drum. Heel down or heel up. Heel down or heel up. If you're playing in a rock band, if you're playing in a funk band, if you're just playing louder volumes all the time, likely you're going to be keeping your heel up because you need that power, right? And you need that leverage to get that volume out of the bass drum. And in jazz, it's the opposite. Heel down is the way to go. Doesn't mean that's the only thing we do, but that's the main or the default position. Heel down. So everything I've played up to this point, heel down. Right? Heel down. So if this is something that you struggle with and you want to become more proficient at playing jazz, you got to work on playing everything you play with your heel up, play it quieter and with your heel down. And it's going to really improve your control over the kit, over the volume of the kit, over the volume of the bass drum. Now, so that's heel down in general. But what if you want to play louder, right? If I'm playing a funk groove and it's getting really loud and I just need more volume, then I might raise my foot. So instead, I might go. So suddenly, that's a lot more volume that I cannot achieve with my heel down. So just really make sure you're paying attention to what volume the music needs. And as long as you're paying attention to that, then you won't play too loud or too quiet in the bass drum. So that's one thing. Another thing is if I play if I want to play a quick double on the bass drum, I can do it heel down. Like if I'm playing a samba, right? That's all heel down, and you should be able to do it. But what if I play if I want to play a quick double at a really high velocity and volume? I might, like Elvin Jones has this thing where you roll and then you hit the downbeat, right? And there's like a little bass drum pickup. I like to lift my heel up. You see how I lifted my heel? Right? So in that case, I lift my heel because I want a big impact on the downbeat. Also, that leads me to the next point. I want to sometimes leave the beater in the head, and then sometimes I want to leave the beater off the head. So in, off. Listen to the difference in the tone of the bass drum. It almost changes a half of a pitch, right? Do, 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 boom. Pretty cool. So, and that's the point. Sometimes it gives your bass drum more character when you're using these different tones at different volumes. So for that roll, I like that closed sound, right? I saw Elvin 5 feet away, and I saw his bass drum, and he would keep the beater in sometimes he would play out. So certain situations, certain times, keep the beater in, right? Or if I'm playing, and so I'll use both. I'll use beater in and beater out, and I want you to just kind of try to recognize the difference. So there I used a combination of beater into the head, beater out of the head. And hopefully the recording, the microphone was able to pick up and distinguish for you the difference. It really makes a difference. Do not play the bass drum one way. Beater in, beater out. Use those techniques to give your bass drum tone more personality, okay? And then the last thing I will say, which directly pertains to beater in, beater out, is if you're playing beater out, but you have a pillow inside, or you have muffling, you have a blanket, then it's really not going to make that much of a difference. Very little difference. But if the bass drum's open like this one is, then it makes a big difference. So I encourage you, because that's kind of a distinguishing tone in jazz, to have that open sound, right? And there's different degrees. Like this is totally open, no muffling. But some people like to put a little towel. I sometimes will put a towel at the base of the bass drum pedal to just give it a little muffling, and you still get some tone. And you lose some of the high overtones, right? So I would put I don't have a towel now, but I would put it right there, right? But I never, ever put anything inside the bass drum, because then you lose some of a lot of the personality, and you can only play it one way, and you have to hit it hard to get it to really speak. If the bass drum's open, I don't have to hit it hard to get it to speak. Right? And I can utilize the open and close sound to give it more personality and character. So many advantages. So I encourage you all, it will really help you improve your control of the bass drum if you play with the bass drum, at least if you practice with an open bass drum. Then you'll be much more aware of the bass drum being played at different volumes with different tones, right? And it'll force you to really work on your control overall. Okay, so I'm just going to play now using all these different techniques, and I just want you to try to observe how I'm really making an effort to make sure I'm not treating every note the same. I'm playing different volume, using different tones, and playing heel up, different techniques, all kinds of things that go into play with just playing the bass drum, right? All right, here we go. All right, so that is today's lesson, how the bass drum should be played on the drum set in a jazz context. I hope this was helpful. Again, let me know who you are. Make sure you're subscribed, like the video, and I will see you on the next one. But you know what to do until then, right? Practice hard, but what? Practice smart. All right? Take care. Have a good one. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.